Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. میں ہوں ڈاکٹر افشا ہما, فیکلٹی ممبر ایٹ دا ڈپارٹمنٹ آف ایجوکیشنل پلاننگ, پالیسی اسٹڈیز اینڈ لیڈرشپ آف علامہ اقبال اوپن یونیورسٹی. میں ریسرچ میتھڈالوجیز پروگرام سیریز میں ایک نئے پروگرام کے ساتھ آپ کی خدمت میں دوبارہ حاضر ہوں. ریسرچ میتھڈالوجیز کے کورسز MA-EPM میں 6569 اور 6570 کوڈ کے ساتھ پیش کیے جاتے ہیں, جبکہ Mphil EPM میں یہی کورسز 3706 کوڈ کے ساتھ پیش کیے جاتے ہیں. ریسرچ میتھڈالوجیز کی سیریز میں ہم اپنے ایکسپرٹس کو بلاتے ہیں اور ان سے ان کی ریسرچ کے بارے میں گفتگو کرتے ہیں, خصوصاً اس ریسرچ میتھڈالوجیز کے حوالے سے جو انہوں نے اڈاپٹ کر رکھی ہوتی ہیں. آج ہمارے ساتھ ڈاکٹر سدرا رضوان موجود ہیں, جو کہ فیکلٹی آف ایجوکیشن میں ڈپارٹمنٹ آف سیکنڈری ٹیچر ایجوکیشن کی ممبر ہیں. وی ویلکم یو ٹو دا اسٹوڈیوز آف علامہ اقبال اوپن یونیورسٹی.
تھینک یو.
فرسٹ آف آل ہم ریکویسٹ کریں گے کہ آپ ہمیں بتائیں کہ آپ کی اسٹڈی کا ٹاپک کیا تھا اور آپ کی اسٹڈی کس بارے میں تھی.
اسٹڈی کا ٹاپک تھا میرا سیکنڈری ٹیچر پہ اسٹڈی تھی اور نیڈ اسیسمنٹ کی گئی تھی سیکنڈری ٹیچرز کی, ان کی کیپیسٹی ڈیولپمنٹ کے لیے اکارڈنگ ٹو نیشنل پروفیشنل اسٹینڈرڈس جو کہ اب 2009 میں رائج ہوئے ہیں ٹیچرز کے لیے. تو ان کو مد نظر رکھتے ہوئے ٹیچرز کی نیڈ اسیسمنٹ کی گئی اور اس کے بعد ریکمنڈیشنز دی گئیں کہ ان کی کیپیسٹی ڈیولپمنٹ کیسے کی جائے. اور اس میں ہم پبلک سیکٹرز کی اسکولس لیے گئے تھے اور اس میں سیکنڈری اسکول ٹیچرز تھے اور ان ٹیچرز کے بارے میں پوچھا گیا تھا ان کے اسٹوڈنٹ سے بھی اور ان کے ہیڈ ٹیچر سے بھی, اور اس طرح سارا ڈیٹا اکٹھا کیا گیا تھا. اور اس کے بعد اسٹریٹا وائز یعنی کہ میل فیمیل اربن رورل سب کو انکلوڈ کیا گیا تھا اور پھر ریکمنڈیشنز بھی انہی چاروں اسٹریٹا کے اکارڈنگلی دی گئی تھیں.
دس ساؤنڈز ویری انٹرسٹنگ. میرا خیال ہے کہ یہ نیشنل پروفیشنل اسٹینڈرڈس 2009 کے قریب ڈیولپ کیے گئے تھے.
2009 میں 2009 کی پالیسی میں 2008 کی پالیسی میں تھے اور 9 میں یہ ڈیولپ کیے گئے تھے, جو کہ 4 پروونسز ایز ویل ایز اسلام آباد کیپٹل ٹیریٹری نے ایکسیپٹ کیے تھے کہ وی ول امپلیمنٹ دیم بیکاز ایز ناؤ ایجوکیشن از پروونشل, سو آل دا پروونسز ور آن بورڈ آن دس.
اوکے. آپ کی اسٹڈی کے میجر آبجیکٹیوز کیا ہیں, ریسرچ کوشچنس کیا ہیں, ہائپوتھیسز کیا ہیں؟
اسٹوڈنٹس کی سہولت کے لیے میں بتانا چاہوں گی کہ جب بھی ہم آبجیکٹیوز فارمولیٹ کرتے ہیں اسٹڈی کے, تو ساتھ ہی ہم ان کے لیے جو آبجیکٹیوز ڈیمانڈ کرتے ہیں کہ ریسرچ کویسچنز بنائے جائیں تو ان کے ریسرچ کویسچنز بنانے چاہیے. اور جہاں کوئی ریلیشن شپ یا ڈفرینس یا کوئی بھی کسی قسم کا آپ نے کوئی ٹیسٹ لگانا ہے, اس کے لیے بہتر ہوتا ہے کہ آپ ہائپوتھیسز ڈیولپ کریں. تو میری اسٹڈی میں میرے جو آبجیکٹیوز تھے وہ ریسرچ کویسچنز اور ہائپوتھیسز کے ساتھ الائنڈ ہیں, اور اسی طرح میں آپ کو بتاتی ہوں. پہلا آبجیکٹیو تھا ٹو انویسٹیگیٹ دی ایگزسٹنگ لیولز آف انسٹرکشنل پلاننگ اینڈ اسٹریٹجیز پریکٹس بائی سیکنڈری اسکول ٹیچرز ان the following 3 dimensions and the relationship among these dimensions according to the national standards, and the 3 dimensions were knowledge and understanding, dispositions and performance and skills. یہاں میں بتانا چاہوں گی کہ نیشنل پروفیشنل اسٹینڈرڈز جو ہیں وہ آل ٹوگیدر 10 ہیں. تو کیونکہ میں نے ایک ان ڈیپتھ اسٹڈی کی تھی جو کہ کافی ڈیپ تھی, اسٹریٹا وائز تھی, تو اس لیے میں نے صرف ایک اسٹینڈرڈ لیا تھا جو کہ 4th اسٹینڈرڈ ہے نیشنل پروفیشنل اسٹینڈرڈس کا, اور وہ ہے انسٹرکشنل پلاننگ اینڈ اسٹریٹجیز. تو اسی کے اوپر میری پوری اسٹڈی بیس کرتی ہے, اور اس لیے آبجیکٹیوز بھی اکارڈنگ ٹو انسٹرکشنل پلاننگ اینڈ اسٹریٹجیز ہی بنائے گئے ہیں. اور جو اسٹڈی ہے وہ ایز دا اسٹینڈرڈ از گیون ان دا پروفیشنل اسٹینڈرڈ, اسی کے انڈیکیٹرس کے اوپر اسٹڈی کی گئی ہے, کوئی ایکسٹرا انڈیکیٹرز ایڈ نہیں کیے گئے.
یعنی ہم یہ کہہ سکتے ہیں کہ ہم نے کوئی الگ سے تھیوریٹیکل فریم ورک ڈیولپ نہیں کیا.
جی,
آپ کا کنسیپچوئل فریم ورک انہی پروفیشنل اسٹینڈرڈز کے اوپر اور ان میں سے بھی ایک کے اوپر.
جی, اوکے. کیونکہ دیز اسٹینڈرڈز آر فردر دے آر ڈیوائڈیڈ انٹو 3 dimensions and each dimension is further divided into sub categories or indicators you can say. So each indicator was measured.
Okay.
So like it was like 7 for one dimension, then 3 for the other, and 8 so it was quite a lot of work if we put them together. So it was quite a lot. So to achieve the first objective, 2 research questions were formulated to see that what are the existing levels of instructional planning and strategies of in-service secondary school teachers, and how far the secondary school teachers they practice these indicators.
Okay.
And as the part of a relationship of the objective is concerned, for that hypothesis was formulated, and null hypothesis, that there is no significant relationship among the 3 dimensions of instructional planning and strategies of secondary school teachers, and in 3 dimensions, knowledge and understanding, dispositions and performance and skills was focused.
Okay.
The second objective was to find out the difference between each dimension of instructional planning and strategies and the expected standard according to the national standard. So, to achieve this objective, the null hypothesis was that there was no significant difference between existing levels of secondary school teachers in each dimension of instructional planning and strategies and the expected standard of each dimension of instructional planning and strategy. The third objective was to analyze the dimensions of instructional planning and strategies and their indicators according to the training needs for the capacity development of secondary teachers. The research question was, what are the dimension wise indicators of instructional planning and strategies in which the secondary school teachers need training for their capacity development, and this was given firstly according to the dimensions and then according to each indicator and the need for the training. Yes. The fourth objective was to determine the relationship between each dimension of instructional planning and strategies of secondary school teachers with their qualification, and the fifth one was the relationship between each dimension of instructional planning and strategies of secondary school teachers with their teaching experience. And then sixth objective was to determine the dimension wise difference in instructional planning and strategies of the urban and rural secondary school teachers, and seventh was to find the dimension wise difference in instructional planning strategies of the male and female secondary school teachers. And to achieve both these objectives for fourth and fifth, the hypothesis was that there is no relationship between each dimension of instructional planning and strategies and secondary school teachers with respect to their qualification or teaching experience, whereas for the sixth and seventh objectives, the null hypothesis was that there was no difference between each dimension of instructional planning and strategies of secondary school teachers with respect to location and gender. So, these were the 7 objectives and their related research questions and hypothesis of my study.
As I am looking at your objectives and research questions, तो मुझे लगता है कि it's a very vast scope kind of study. कैसे select किया आपने अपनी methodology को और क्या methodology adopt की?
It was a survey. It was a need assessment study, and it was a survey study, and it was conducted by using quantitative as well as qualitative tools. So, the methodology was purely quantitative, but the tools used were both, which were quantified later.
So qualitative part was also quantified
later on, and for the purpose of triangulation, because as the data was collected according to the self-report of the secondary school teachers, so it is must that we should, if we are getting data from only one source, so according to research, it is better that the findings must be validated through triangulation, which was done in my study.
So triangulation, क्योंकि आपने ये use किया, तो triangulation you would say is a process of validation?
Yes, it is. It authenticates in some studies it is also used like validation and reliability, it enhances, but validation is, for the validation of the findings, triangulation must be done. So just elaborate a little bit more, how did you do that? For the knowledge and understanding dimension, as I collected the data from the secondary school teachers according to their self-report questionnaire, so it was triangulated with their interview as well as observation. I conducted, the researcher conducted the observation as well as the interview, and then the three, the observation and interview were quantified, because I told you that I did not do any qualitative analysis. So they were quantified, and then rank order correlation was applied to see the difference between the three.
Nice.
So,
and how vast was your population area? Like, was it whole Pakistan?
Yes, it was. Population was all the 4 provinces as well as Islamabad Capital Territory. So, yes, and then for to get the sample at the first stage from all the 4 provinces, 1 district was selected through convenient sampling, and further from each district 1 tehsil was selected through random sampling, and further from those tehsil, secondary schools were selected according to proportionate stratified random sampling. So, we had a very good proportion of all the strata in the population. So likewise, so that the results can be generalized. So it was kept in mind that there should not be any problem at the end of the generalizability. So these things were kept in mind while developing a sample and sampling technique.
So listening to your descriptions, I can see that this is not a just descriptive statistical analysis, because you had your hypothesis and you just used the word generalization as well. So we can say this was an inferential kind of study. It was quantitative and inferential as well. Okay, good. Why did you choose this methodology for these?
Because I was more inclined towards doing a quantitative study. So this survey research, this methodology quantitative is used in survey research, so it increases the generalizability of your research. So this, according to your researches and according to the methodology of a research, survey research is given importance when you have such a large vast area and you are drawing sample from that area. So firstly it should be proportionate, then your sample should be representative, and your study, the results should be generalizable. So that is why these things were kept in mind. So that is why quantitative study was done.
Anything specific to your topic that you think that this study had to be done in this way? Like, one is an aspect that what survey research does, but specific to your study, was there something unique about it that you decided that no other method but survey?
Yes, that was like, it was need analysis. So for need analysis, I had to go to people to get their views on it, and then after to get their opinions, and after getting their opinions, a researcher cannot depend only on one method. So for that I had to have other methods. So my so the 3 dimensions were cross-checked. Knowledge and understanding was cross-checked through methodological triangulation, in which the researcher used interview and observation, whereas disposition dimension and performance and skill dimensions were cross-verified through data triangulation, in which the secondary school students reported about the dispositions of their teachers, and the secondary school head teachers reported about the performance and skills of the teachers.
So as I understand, and correct me if I am wrong, when you are using more than one method to verify an information, that is methodological.
Yes, that is methodological. And when you are using more than one person, with the data source, then it can be time, it can be space, it can be person. So it is called data triangulation.
So then you used 3 different sets of samples from whom you were collecting them. So these students were also secondary school students and the teachers and head teachers.
The students were, it was like one head teacher from each school, then 5 teachers selected randomly for that head, from that head teacher's school, and for each teacher 3 secondary school students were selected randomly. So that those 3 students reported about the specific teacher.
Would you say that having such a spread of population or sample, we should say, and having so many data sets made it difficult for you further on for analyzing the information?
No, it wasn't difficult, because everything was in sequence. Because you have to plan your questionnaires. It's not that you are collecting them and keeping them. It should be organized from day one. For example, what I did when I got the data back, because students I did personally. So when I used to go to the school, I used to bring my students' data with me. And when I got from the teachers and from the principal, I used to make set of each number. Like if I am coding them, teacher 1, so my teacher 1 self-reporting is there on all the 3 dimensions. Then with disposition, I'll attach the students reporting, and with the performance and skills, the head teachers reporting. So I had sets. So everything was organized. If it is not organized, then there is a problem. Obviously, it was very large data.
So everything was organized. In a service study which has such a huge spread, organizing your data from the very beginning is very important.
And even I won't say only organizing, to facilitate yourself, because researcher needs to facilitate his or her own self, because research is a hectic job. So what you do, as the data started coming from, for example, from each school, I made it a point that daily I should add 5 questionnaires, complete. 5 questionnaires daily, and in the end, I think so, I was just left with 50 or 100, which I did in 2 to 3 days. So it wasn't that I collected everything and then I sat to tabulate it. No, it was entered in SPSS as I started getting it.
Okay, so you used SPSS
yes,
for your statistical
analysis. Yes, SPSS 16 version was used.
Good.
And for interview and observation, it is like I got 86% response rate. So out of 345, it made 400 were the sample and 345 returned the questionnaires. For observation, only 80 were selected conveniently.
Okay.
And from out of those 80, further 40 were selected for the purpose of interview.
Okay.
So triangulation was done on the results of those 40 only.
Right. Right.
It was not that 345.
So we should say that as we go towards qualitative tools,
yes,
we reduce the number of participants in
yes,
sample. Okay.
Because you have to do it individually. For one lesson, 80 teachers, so you need quite a lot of
So because
time.
this is a survey study, I really want to know, do you think it is advisable for the researchers that they should go to every venue themselves?
If it's possible for a researcher, one should make the effort, because it enhances the validity and then the what do you say, the trust of the researcher.
Right.
It's very difficult to trust somebody else. You have to train them, and then even then you don't know what you are getting back is authentic. When you go, you make the effort. You at least you are sure that whatever you are getting is authentic and it's not fabricated. When you have made so much effort, so this is the last thing. I went thrice to the same schools to collect the data from the teachers far from rural areas. Even then, after making so much effort, I got 86%.
Wow. So and specifically you had observations as well.
Yes.
So I think for observations you had to go yourself.
Yes, I did, and even for the interview also. But observation was that you can, here the research gives you a chance that you can do it conveniently, maybe to the areas which are closer by or which are easier for you, or those who will give you the appointments easily. So there it's not like it wasn't done randomly, it was done conveniently.
But even when you say conveniently, you did not reduce the spread of your sample. Conveniently does not mean कि okay we leave Balochistan, हम छोड़ देते हैं और हम सिर्फ इस्लामाबाद से कर लेते हैं. Not like that. That's not convenience.
No, it's not like that, because as it was for the purpose of triangulation, validation of the findings only. So it was not from all the 4 provinces, but it covered 3 provinces.
Okay.
So because it was very difficult for me to go again to Balochistan, because once I got the questionnaires back, because it was a smaller version of that, and when I was conducting, the other thing was the vacations. When I was doing my interview and observation in those days, Quetta was off, and even Aptabad was off. Okay. Because there were winters in those days, so they were off. So I couldn't. So whatever
that's
was
an element that restricted you to confine yourself in the later stage.
Yes.
Okay.
Just last stage.
Okay. Now one last question. Actually, 2 last questions. Okay. One is that if I ask you to conduct this study all over again, is it possible to conduct the same study with some other kind of methodology?
Yes, there is always room for improvement and for innovation. You can do it. Once I have done this survey and we know how to go about it. So there is one more thing, that you can do it at experimental, because these national standards can be adapted for secondary level teachers, but they are not been adapted yet.
Okay.
So why not?
So they are written for elementary.
They are written for primary, and can be adapted for secondary as well as teacher educators according to the document. So it can, now we can have an experimental study. Said why not, according to those standards and their indicators, have a control group, experimental group, teach them accordingly, and then see. First do the.
So do you think then your research question will be different?
There will be different according to the methodology. Everything changes. So it will change according to the methodology what you are using. It will be true when you will design it, you will see what kind of experimental design you need for it. Maybe you won't be needing 2 groups. You will be needing only 1 group to check their performance before that experiment.
And so with every methodology, we can say the research question can be different, or other way round, that every research question leads to a different methodology. Okay.
Yes, it can.
Further developing upon this, the last question, as we always ask to our experts, is what do you suggest to the students that how should they choose a methodology? Because once they are developing their proposals, at what stage they should start thinking about methodology as well, and how should they choose it?
The thing is, when they are at the proposal stage, obviously they have a topic in mind, a theme in mind. So that theme must have come from somewhere, by reading some literature. So now when it's focused, because when you are going through theme or you are going through the topic, you have a vast thing. Narrow down your research now, read literature, review of literature. The more you will review the literature, the more things you will come about. You will come to know how the researchers before you in similar fields have worked, and how your study can be done according to their research. Or it's not that if researcher A has used this approach and B has used, read their literature, think out of the box, think of a third, maybe you can integrate the two.
Right.
Or think of something new, that if they can do this by this, and if when you have done extensive study, then you come up with things, and you know, and then again your limitations.
Okay.
It's not that you are reading research from abroad. Okay? So your limitations should be in front of you. What you can do, what you cannot do. Do not be very ambitious, because at the time of synopsis, what's in the student mind is, let this stage pass and I'll take care of everything later. I want to tell you, later your problems, they multiply. Try to minimize them at this stage. Plan for the last dot at this stage. So you can go on smoothly and submit your thesis within time.
I think that's the biggest challenge, particularly at Mphil and PhD level, that when the students pick up topics, they pick very broad topics. And I should say you also did a marvelous job. That's a huge topic and a huge data set that you dealt with. But yes, very rightly said. One more thing which is very interesting in your response is that when you are doing literature review, usually what we have seen is that people talk more about the findings of previous studies, but not the methodologies. So that's a very nice tip for our students, that when they are doing literature review, they should look at the methodologies as well, and then be selective. Right, not necessarily कि किसी ने ऑस्ट्रेलिया और यूएस में बड़ी एक्सटेंसिव स्टडी की थी तो आपके लिए यहाँ भी पॉसिबल होगी. Be selective, be realistic. Thank you so much. I think you have briefly told us very nicely about how did you conduct your survey, and survey methods are I think a whole range of methods. It's one kind of survey that you conducted, and you used qualitative as well as quantitative tools. But one last thing, how would you say you quantified the qualitative part? We did not talk much about that.
Because my interview was structured. It was a structured interview, so it was very easy to quantify it by giving it numerical values. As well as the observation list was according to a checklist. So that why because it was pre-planned that these will be quantified. It is not that at 11th hour they were quantified. At the beginning, when the study was planned, it was planned that for triangulation they will be quantified. And it was a cross-sectional study. So why? Because no exploitation of anything was done. So it was a snapshot, cross-sectional studies, whatever was there was taken as it is.
So if we are going with the qualitative approach and having all open-ended questions and unstructured interviews, I think then
it's again another study.
Then it's totally different.
It's like you are having 40 interviews and 80 observations for qualitative, and those cannot be a checklist. If you are doing qualitative, they should be in depth, and then you cannot have only one. At least 3 to 4, with time duration, difference of time. So then it is in itself a full-fledged study.
Right. So your study is purely quantitative,
Yes,
just using some information in qualitative form. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'm sure کہ ہمارے students کے لیے یہ تمام information about survey using multiple data tools, multiple data analysis and multiple data sources. This is a very interesting study and very nicely elaborated by Dr. Sidra Rizwan. We are thankful to you.
And it was an honor to be here.
In our next programs, we will be coming up with more research scholars and with more research methodologies. And as we are going on with these programs, تو ہمیں لگ رہا ہے کہ ہر اسٹڈی اور اس کے ریسرچ کویشچنز اور اس کے آبجیکٹیوز اپنے اندر یہ خاصیت رکھتے ہیں کہ وہ آپ کو ایک سرٹن میتھڈالوجیز کی طرف ڈائریکٹ کر دیتے ہیں. سو وین یو بگن ٹو پلان یور اسٹڈی، اپنے ریسرچ کویشچنز کو اور آبجیکٹیوز کو دیکھتے ہوئے، لٹریچر ریویو کرتے ہوئے وہ میتھڈالوجیز آئیڈینٹیفائی کریں جو آپ کے آبجیکٹیوز کو فلفل کر سکیں، جو آپ کے ریسرچ کویشچن کو آنسر کر سکیں. اس کے ساتھ ہی ہمارے آج کے پروگرام کا اور اس ڈسکشن کا وقت ختم ہوتا ہے. ہم انشاءاللہ تعالیٰ اپنے آگے آنے والے پروگرامز میں اور میتھڈالوجیز پہ بات کریں گے اور اپنے نئے سے نئے ایکسپرٹس کو لے کے آئیں گے. شکریہ. اللہ حافظ.